Hello there, Tonsil here. Wanted to talk a little bit about ray tracing in Team Fortress 2. For those of you who don't know, news came out last week that Portal is getting ray tracing. It's a bit of a long story, but basically Nvidia is, selling these new graphics cards soon with ray tracing, and they use Portal as a showcase for it. And well, the obvious question is, of course, if Portal gets ray tracing, why doesn't Team Fortress 2 get ray tracing? So I figured I'd, look into it a little bit and talk about what we can expect. First of all, let's talk about what ray tracing even is. So ray tracing basically means that whenever you have a light source in your video game, the computer will track the light beams from that light source. From a lamp, it's beaming down, it's bouncing off walls, off ceilings, before it hits the camera. And that means it changes the way the light is received. And if you have a lot of lights and a lot of rays and they bounce around all over the place, it produces a really realistic way to make the scene. The problem is you need a lot of rays and a lot of calculations, and it's just too difficult, right? So most graphics cards can't do it. Big budget animated movies can do it because they spend 10 minutes, an hour rendering one frame, but you don't want to be gaming at 0.01 FPS. So it was kind of cool a few years ago when Nvidia released the RDX series of graphics cards that had dedicated ray tracing cores, and they've been improving them, and they're now, well, you still won't be ray tracing everything at max resolution all the time. That's, you're not going to be doing 4K full ray tracing. What they're usually doing is use ray tracing for some light sources or for reflections or for shadows, and that just makes everything way more realistic. It's literally like some, the best 3D animated movies. How they look, you can have a video game that looks like that. And all they have to do is change from the old way of rendering, which uses a lot of little tricks, a lot of pre-rendered things, shadow maps and all that stuff. Instead of using all the tricks and all the, sort of solutions that are not really solutions, to make it possible for us to have video games with shadows and lights and stuff, even though we can't do ray tracing in real time, to replace most of that with an actual ray tracing core. And it's in theory much simpler because, all those tricks, they took a long time to develop. They're very complex, they're very intensive for the developer to make. Whereas ray tracing, you just need to say, well, here's a light source, here are the materials you need to bounce off of, and as long as you bounce off and the materials have the right properties, everything should work. And for those of you who haven't seen it already, Nvidia did this last generation with a Quake demo. Quake, very old video game, after my time, but still. Very simple, but they just plugged in a ray tracing engine and boom, it worked. It was awesome. It looked really cool. That also highlights one of the problems with ray tracing, which is that you can't just switch out the engine. You need to tweak everything. You need to add the textures. You need to say okay, the floor is so reflective and this curtain lets through this much light, and this is what I've been using for fog or all that. There's a lot of work involved in doing it. If you read the announcement, Nvidia actually had a team dedicated to doing this for Portal. They spent months changing Portal textures, regenerating them, adding all sorts of effects like fog and light sources, and tweaking the overall illumination, because if you just put ray tracing in, like the original Quake demo, parts of that map are way too dark and some parts are way too light. It completely bungled up the aesthetic of Quake. It wasn't Quake anymore. And somebody needs to go over that and fix that for every level. And they've done that for Portal, and it looks amazing. It's really, it's a 15-year-old game, but it looks brand new. It's really cool. So Team Fortress 2 kind of uses the same source engine as Portal, so came out in the same orange box. Would it theoretically be possible to swap out the engine and just plunk ray tracing into Team Fortress 2? And the long and the short answer to that is no and yes. No, because, like I said, so Nvidia actually did this. This wasn't Valve. This was not Valve adding ray tracing to Portal. They're not working on a new Portal. They're not doing anything with it. They just said, okay, Nvidia, you guys can do it. It's fine with us. They, retweeted the announcement on Twitter, but they're not the ones implementing this. It's Nvidia doing it. So just because they managed to do it for Portal doesn't mean Valve is going to do it for Team Fortress 2. Unfortunately, it also means that, well, we know from NVIDIA that it took them months to do, and that's for Portal. And no offense, but Portal is kind of a simple game. It has the whole Portal thing, which is complex, and gameplay-wise it's fantastic, but there are not that many textures. It's not that big of a game. Not when you get right down to it. Compared to Team Fortress 2. You know, the number of maps, the number of different maps, the number of different textures in maps, all the effects for Pyrovision or Roam Vision, is that still a thing? It's way more difficult to do it for Team Fortress 2. And that, you know, I'm not even starting on the hundreds upon hundreds of cosmetic items and weapons. So will we get a ray tracing Team Fortress 2? Well, NVIDIA probably isn't going to do this. I don't know why they picked Portal. One possibility may be that NVIDIA is anticipating more sales on the Switch. So, you know, kind of like a resurgence. Portal just came out on the Switch, or it's coming out, I think. And maybe they're banking on that. Like, hey, the game is being sold again. It's popular. It's getting in the news. So we'll add ray tracing to it. And they can't do that to a very modern game, because modern games are too intensive and too demanding. But Portal, you know, it's a 15-year-old game. Most computers can run it. So maybe that. But then again, I don't think the Switch can do ray tracing. Let's be honest here. It's a Switch. It's not that powerful. So I don't really know why they picked Portal. It is a beloved video game, and I guess it lends itself well to ray tracing. But if you know, let me know. Post it down in the comments. Now the other thing is, again, if we want Team Fortress 2 ray tracing, we would have to ask NVIDIA to do it, and I don't think they're going to do it, because what do they have to gain? The mod for Portal is going to be free. So if you have Portal, NVIDIA is not making any money out of this, other than through selling graphics cards to do RTX. And for Team Fortress 2, you know, there's not even going to be sales. Like, how would they keep track of sales or profit that they could take a chunk of and, you know, reward for adding ray tracing? So I don't think NVIDIA is going to do it. You know, they needed one game to add ray tracing to, and they picked Portal. They're not going to add a second one just to please some small group of gamers. Sorry guys, you know, there's dozens of us.
There are dozens of us. Dozens!
However, one important thing to keep in mind is, if you read the announcement carefully, NVIDIA actually released a whole suite of tools that lets video game modders mod in support for ray tracing. You know, like in Minecraft, where there's all these texture and graphics mods. Theoretically, with, you know, if the announcement is correct, which I don't know if it is, the way NVIDIA is saying, it's basically, you know, anyone can add ray tracing to any old game. It will take a shitload of time. Like, it is a massive undertaking. I cannot stress this enough. It took dedicated NVIDIA programmers months to do it for Portal. But in theory, anyone in the community can pick up these tools and do it for Team Fortress 2. And we know the community is into this, because we have seen, you know, Team Fortress 2 in the latest Unreal Engine. It looks absolutely badass. And that must have been a ton of work. So I have no doubt that someone will be interested in doing this for Team Fortress 2. Whether it will look as good as the Portal mod, that depends on the, you know, competence of whoever's implementing it. Is Valve going to do it? Almost certainly not. You know, even if it was a simple matter of copy-pasting the graphical engine, the source engine. Team Fortress 2 has been, you know, in the development for 9 years. It's been out for 15 years. It is a massively complicated code base. Like, all the different parts are intermingled like a ball of spaghetti. So, ideally the source, you know, the graphics engine is kept separate from the rest of the game. But in practice, I doubt that's the case. I doubt, you know, it's easy to just update one without the other. So even if they wanted to just copy-paste that source mod, it would not work. They'd probably still have to do a ton of work. And we all know the graphics aren't the biggest problem that Team Fortress has right now. So if the Team Fortress team wants to work on this, I don't think they're, you know, if they want to work on the game, they're not going to be working on adding ray tracing. I doubt it. And it's absolutely not going to be useful to ask Valve for it. You can ask NVIDIA, but it's probably also not going to be useful to ask them. My hope lies in the community, for better or worse. So yeah, there you have it. There is ray tracing coming for Portal. It's not coming for Team Fortress 2, but maybe if the community jumps in, we might see it at some point in the distant future. If somebody makes that mod, I'm sure Valve will allow it. I mean, they've allowed it for Portal, so why not TF2? If it's going to be playable, that depends. If you have an RTX 4090, probably. If you have a sweet $1,600 to drop on a GPU, then, you know, you do you. I won't. I'm playing here on a 1660 Super, so, you know, can't really do ray tracing. Theoretically, it works on all Vulkan-enabled graphics cards, but, you know, you want to have usable frames. You know, you want to have a usable frame rate. So I'm not going to be using it, not in the foreseeable future, maybe sometime. But it's not inconceivable that it will come. So cautious optimism. If you have any questions or further comments, drop them down in the comment section. I apologize for the lack of streams. As you guys may have noticed, I've had COVID. I still have COVID. I feel very sick. So this video is going to be it for this weekend, I think. Hope you found it a little bit useful. I think it's an interesting development that we get maybe ray tracing. And yeah, see you all in the future. Thanks a lot out.